There is a list of losers at the nurses' station, and I have always been at the top. They say that what's worse than being on duty is having your fiancé cancel the premarital checkup 99 times. The first time, Sophia had to supervise a new intern, so she postponed our premarital checkup. The second time, the intern had to perform his first surgery, and Sophia said she had to be there the whole time and couldn't miss it. The 99th time, the intern had issues with a case analysis, so Sophia stayed up all night discussing it with him. When the hospital administration canceled our prenuptial checkup appointment for the 99th time, I sent my final message in the work group. I had submitted my transfer request and couldn't walk down the aisle with Sophia. From then on, we went our separate ways and never crossed paths again. After sending it, I returned all the keys to the departments and headed straight to the doctors without borders organization at the border. I asked again, Sophia, does today's prenatal checkup appointment still stand? This was the 99th time I had asked this question. Sophia furrowed her brows, a hint of impatience flashing in her eyes. I'm sorry. Dr. Matthew has to attend the morning medical report today. He's not very familiar with the case analysis yet, so I need to help him. Another morning report. How annoying. Matthew interjected. Nurse Sophia, the case analysis you prepared for me was so timely. I didn't know where to start. He deliberately held the folder high, filled with Sophia's neat notes and highlighted key points. I haven't slept for 3 days, and my eyes feel like they've been sanded down. Let's talk about the pre-marriage checkup later. You've waited 5 years, so what's a couple more days? Sophia didn't look back and pulled Matthew away. In the past, I would have chased after her and asked why she always postponed the pre-marriage checkup. But she would always say that I didn't understand the importance of her work. This time, I just nodded. Sophia paused, a fleeting look of confusion crossing her eyes before she resumed her cold demeanor. As compensation, I'll bring you some pastries from the new dessert shop that opened in the emergency department tonight. She spoke formally. Before leaving, she volunteered to smooth out the non-existent creases on the collar of Matthew's white coat. Standing at the cafeteria window, I saw Sophia hand Matthew the red bean porridge she had made herself. Thank you, Nurse Sophia. Your porridge is so comforting. Matthew smiled brightly. This scene made me feel a little heartbroken. 3 months ago, I had just undergone a liver transplant surgery and was starving to the point of fainting. Instead, Sophia scolded me in front of everyone. Dr. Oliver, hospital regulations prohibit eating in the office area. As the attending physician, you don't even follow this basic rule. What will the interns think of you? I remember that day I had been in surgery for 12 straight hours, and my blood sugar was so low I was about to faint. She threw my lunchbox into the trash. Back in the office, I dialed a number I had saved at the bottom of my contact list long ago. Director Richard, about the border medical aid project we discussed earlier, I want to participate. The old director on the other end of the line paused. Oliver, didn't you say you didn't want to do it? Why did you suddenly decide to go? I stared intently at the raindrops outside the window. Some things only become clear once you figure them out, and then you realize what truly matters. Dr. Richard fell silent for a moment. Has your fiancé agreed? The medical team will be stationed at the border for a year, and the conditions are harsh with limited communication. We haven't officially married yet, so it's not a problem. All right, the country needs doctors like you. A car will pick you up tomorrow morning. After hanging up the phone, a long-lost sense of relief washed over me. Back in the duty room organizing case files, I realized it was already 3 a.m. Sophia hadn't come by, nor had she brought any sweets or comforting items. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from Matthew's WeChat Moments update. He posted a photo of himself holding an expensive Birkin-style fringed stethoscope, a luxury item in the medical field. The caption stung my eyes. Thank you to Nurse Sophia for the stethoscope. Happy 1-year anniversary since we met as teacher and student. With you guiding me, I no longer feel lost. Only then did I remember that today was the 5th anniversary of our engagement. She had forgotten, or perhaps she had chosen to push it out of her mind. 5 years ago, we hadn't exchanged luxurious gifts, but ordinary white stethoscopes. She once said that when we both become important members of the hospital, We'll replace them with better ones and forever protect each other's health. I'm standing here now, but she's already gone. I turned off my phone and placed the white stethoscope that had accompanied me for 5 years at the bottom of the drawer. At the morning handover meeting, Sophia arrived slowly. Her white coat carried the distinctive scent of the disinfectant Matthew often used. On her chest was a shiny little tree pin, a limited edition souvenir from the hospital's medical technology forum. Our department had discussed this pin before, and Sophia had made it clear that nurses were not allowed to wear any jewelry at the nurses' station, as infection control was of utmost importance. The pin on her chest shone brightly, catching everyone's attention. When she noticed me staring at it, a hint of unease flashed across her face. She said, "I couldn't buy dessert last night because I had to work overtime. I'll make it up to you another time," she explained voluntarily. My gaze shifted to the collar of Matthew's white coat, where there was the same small tree emblem. Sophia followed my line of sight and her expression tensed. "This is just an encouragement gift from the head nurse to the interns. Why are you being so formal?" I smiled and flipped through the documents on the desk. "I submitted a transfer request to HR yesterday and wanted to discuss it with you." Before I could finish, Sophia's phone rang. "Nurse Sophia, there's an emergency. I lost the emergency notes you lent me, and they had your handwritten notes on them. What should I do?" Matthew was speaking on the phone. Sophia's face turned pale upon hearing this, and she stood up immediately. She hurriedly said, "Wait here. I'll be right back." She grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. In the process, she knocked over the surgical emergency manual on my desk, scattering the pages everywhere. A photo of us from our internship also fell to the ground. Sophia didn't even glance at me as she hurriedly left. I lowered my head and picked up the old textbook. 5 years ago, when we were preparing for our residency exams together, she had written on the first page, "We will stand together through thick and thin, walk the path of medicine hand in hand, and not let our white coats go to waste." Those vows sounded so firm at the time, but looking back now, they were just naive promises of youth. Since Matthew was hospitalized, Sophia hasn't looked at me once. I placed our photo and the textbook together in the bottom drawer of my desk. When Richard, the HR director, saw my application form, he nearly jumped out of his chair. "Dr. Oliver, are you planning to join the border medical team? That's impossible. You're crucial to our surgical team, and you're a sure candidate for the department head position next quarter." I took off my white coat and hung it in the changing room, then returned to my office to fill out the application form for the border medical team. The last section of the form required emergency contact information, and the pen hesitated over Sophia's name. Matthew had been standing at the door the whole time, as if waiting for this moment. "Dr. Oliver, look at the gift I got for you." He deliberately raised his wrist, and the brand new Swiss watch shone brightly under the light. The tasseled stethoscope hanging around his neck was a luxury item every medical school graduate dreamed of owning. "Nurse Sophia is such a pain. She makes me take so many vitamins every day, saying I'm too skinny." He shook the medicine bottle in his hand, his eyes gleaming with pride. I kept my head down and continued filling out the form, not responding. Sophia's footsteps grew closer. "Dr. Matthew, did you sleep well last night? I noticed your eyes are still a bit dark." She walked toward Matthew without even glancing at me. Everyone in the nurses' station stopped what they were doing and silently watched the scene unfold. Sophia took out the electronic blood pressure monitor and measured Matthew's blood pressure herself. "Your systolic pressure is a bit high. Did you not rest well last night?" She poured a cup of warm water and handed it to Matthew, preparing to give him his medication. The colleagues in the department looked at me with sympathetic eyes, and some even found it too much to watch, making excuses to leave first. I accidentally pressed my finger against my stomach, which was still throbbing, reminding me of last month's ordeal. After 3 surgeries, I had a severe case of gastroenteritis, the pain so intense I could barely stand. At the time, Sophia coldly handed me a box of medicine, her voice devoid of any warmth. "Take it. There are 3 surgeries in the OR. Just endure it." At that moment, I was utterly confused. Why had the nurse who once cooked porridge for me become so distant? The answer to that question no longer matters now. Oliver, what are you filling out? Sophia had appeared behind me without me noticing, her voice sounding slightly tense. Her gaze fell on the application form, which clearly stated Border Medical Volunteer Service. I was about to speak when Matthew's tray suddenly tilted. The cold disinfectant spilled onto my desk, soaking a pile of original data for innovative, minimally invasive surgery plans. The computer screen flickered and went black, and the medical recorder's indicator light also went out. The entire department fell silent. Everyone knew this was the result of the team's efforts over the past 6 months. I'm sorry, Nurse Sophia. Dr. Oliver suddenly pushed me, Matthew said, holding his wrist, his eyes flashing with a hint of disbelief and panic. Sophia grabbed Matthew's hand, seeing the skin stained red by medical alcohol, and her anger began to rise. Oliver, what's wrong with you? How dare you be so harsh with the new intern? I didn't touch him. The most important thing now is to save the data. These are... Sophia angrily interrupted her, snatching the wet documents and tearing them into pieces. The edges of the paper scraped her wrist, leaving a wound. Blood droplets fell from her fingers onto the floor, but Sophia paid no attention. Is this your revenge? Because I didn't accompany you to the pre-marriage checkup. Her tone was filled with sarcasm. The blood stained the white tiles red, just like my 5 years of genuine feelings, trampled upon without mercy. All the surgical data must be reconstructed within 3 days. Sophia made her final decision. If it can't be done, the pre-marriage medical examination will have to be postponed for now. Her threat sounded too ridiculous, and I couldn't help but laugh. For 5 years, Sophia and I had been putting off the pre-marriage medical examination. We had waited for so many things, like her promotion from nurse to head nurse, me establishing myself in the department, the new surgical ward being established, and the hospital review concluding. Excuses kept piling up, one after another. I bent down to pick up some leftover documents. The paper was already stained with dried blood. Just then, Dr. Richard's phone rang. Oliver, the paperwork for the border medical team has been finalized. Come to the office tomorrow at 9 in the morning for the handover. 9 tomorrow morning is fine. I'll be there on time. After hanging up, Sophia hurriedly grabbed my wrist. Where are you going? Is there something you need to hand over? I haven't heard anything about this. She furrowed her brows, a hint of anxiety in her eyes. Just as I was about to speak, Matthew suddenly let out a loud cry of pain. Nurse Sophia, my hand hurts badly. I think the wound needs to be treated. Sophia immediately turned around and helped Matthew walk away. Wait. I'll accompany Dr. Matthew to have his wound treated. Watching their receding figures, the 5 years of entanglement vanished in an instant. I picked up my phone and confirmed that all the materials for the border medical team were ready. This time, there will be no accidents. In the evening, I was organizing the medical documents I had accumulated over the years when Sophia appeared at the office door. What's the plan for tomorrow? What did Director Richard mean by handover? She asked directly. I didn't stop and continued sorting the books into cardboard boxes. Sophia glanced around the office and felt a bit uneasy seeing how tidy it was. Did you organize everything so thoroughly? Why did you do this? She had always placed great importance on the tidiness of the doctor's office, and often criticized me for having too many things. Now that I had organized everything according to her requirements, she seemed flustered instead. Where's your watch? Sophia suddenly grabbed my left hand. That custom-made medical watch was a gift we had exchanged at the end of our internship, with our initials engraved on the back of the dial. I lost it, I replied casually. Sophia visibly relaxed, her expression softening. It's okay. The watch wasn't new anyway. I bought you a new one. She pulled out a gift box from her bag, containing an imported stethoscope. The end of the stethoscope still had a label from a medical equipment exhibition, and Matthew had just posted a photo of the exact same one on his social media 2 days ago. Dr. Matthew said this brand of stethoscope is particularly sensitive and very suitable for surgeons. Sophia's expression was a bit strange. She put down the stethoscope, her eyes drifting away. Oliver, I have something to discuss with you. Her tone was cautious, completely different from usual. Could you give the first author credit for your new minimally invasive surgical method to Dr. Matthew? I looked up, unsure if I had heard correctly. Sophia hurriedly explained that he had just arrived at the hospital and needed some documentation. You're already an important member of the surgical team, and becoming the head surgeon is almost certain in the future. Don't worry too much about this result. I looked at the person in front of me, who once felt so familiar but now seemed so strange. All right, I agree. I answered calmly. Sophia seemed a bit surprised, as if she hadn't expected me to be so direct. Great. Her eyes lit up. Actually, Dr. Matthew is very promising. He just needs an opportunity. I nodded and continued organizing the documents, not paying much attention to their potential. Sophia's face relaxed, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. I promise you, we'll go to the health checkup center tomorrow morning for the pre-marriage examination. Her promise sounded very sincere, as if the previous 99 cancellations had never happened. As she was speaking, her phone rang again. Matthew's voice came through the speaker. Nurse Sophia, the wound on my wrist hurts more after being treated. Could you come take a look? Sophia's expression hesitated, and she glanced at me for a moment. Do you mind if I go check on him first? No, go ahead. She sighed in relief and quickly packed her bag. I'll be back soon. Don't forget our prenuptial checkup tomorrow morning. Her figure disappeared at the door, her promise still echoing in my ears. It was late at night, but Sophia hadn't come home yet. The next morning, the border medical team's handover vehicle arrived on time at the hospital entrance. I placed the last box of medical literature in the trunk, turned around, and looked at the surgical building where I had worked for 5 years. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the hospital's OA system. Matthew had published the latest medical technology innovation report, which included the surgical plan I had destroyed, with Matthew clearly listed as the first author. There was also a patent application watermark in the bottom right corner. I closed the page, and my phone lit up again. It was a text message from Sophia. Today's pre-marriage medical checkup has been canceled. Dr. Matthew's wrist injury is worse, and I need to accompany him to the orthopedic department for a follow-up visit. We'll reschedule for another day. It had been postponed 99 times already. It didn't matter anymore. I returned to my computer, finished the last handover email, and logged out of all the hospital system accounts. 5 years of memories flashed by like a fast-forwarded movie, suddenly coming to a halt at that moment. Director Richard leaned out of the car window and asked, Oliver, are you ready to go? Yes, everything is ready. The mountain roads to the border were long and difficult, but it was better than staying put and feeling hopeless. I took one last look at my phone, turned it off, and placed it at the bottom of my luggage. A new journey. I didn't want to carry any baggage from the past. The hospital doors closed slowly behind me. I didn't look back as I walked toward the tomorrow I had been waiting for. Welcome to the border medical team, Dr. Oliver. Dr. Richard handed me a thick stack of documents. From today onward, you will embark on a brand new life. The city outside the car window grew increasingly distant, like Sophia's 99 promises that could never be fulfilled. Sophia arrived at the hospital. Matthew's injuries from last night weren't as severe as they seemed, just a case of overreacting. Oliver, I'm sorry about yesterday. Let's go for the pre-marriage checkup today. She pushed open the office door but stopped mid-sentence. The office was surprisingly tidy. The medical certificates on the wall, the professional books on the bookshelf, and the photo frame on the desk were all gone. Even the potted plant she had been nurturing for 3 years was gone. Oliver. Her voice trembled. He left. Nurse Emma passed by the door, her tone cold. What do you mean he left? Where did he go? Sophia caught up with Emma and grabbed her arm. Emma shook off her hand, her eyes filled with disdain. Dr. Oliver has joined the border medical team and doesn't plan to return. Sophia stood there, feeling as though she had been doused with cold water. This can't be true. He said yesterday that he would accompany me for the physical examination today. Her voice was almost unrecognizable. The medical staff passing by all looked at her with cold eyes, none of them stopping to explain. Sophia rushed straight to Richard's office, forgetting even the courtesy of knocking. Dr. Richard, Why did you approve Oliver's request to go to the border? He clearly promised to accompany me for the pre-marriage checkup today. Dr. Richard put down the documents he was holding and adopted a serious expression. Firstly, Dr. Oliver's decision to transfer was his personal choice. As an outstanding doctor, his decision should be respected. Second, Nurse Sophia, let's be honest, over the past 5 years, you've canceled more than 90 pre-marriage health checks. Not Dr. Oliver. Dr. Richard's words hit Sophia like a blow, leaving her speechless. Just as she was about to explain, the office door swung open, and Matthew walked in with a smile on his face. Dr. Richard, I heard that Dr. Oliver is transferring. I'd like to apply to take over all his projects and research materials. Matthew's eyes betrayed his unhidden ambition, completely different from the wounded and vulnerable look he had yesterday. Dr. Richard frowned, and Sophia finally saw the true face of this young doctor. After leaving the hospital, Sophia frantically dialed Oliver's phone, but all she heard was the number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. The WeChat messages and emails she sent were like stones sinking into the sea, with no response at all. Communication restrictions in the border region were strict, and aside from a monthly satellite phone call, she was effectively cut off from the outside world. Dr. Michael from the emergency department handed her a glass of water. Dr. Oliver had said before leaving. Michael hesitated for a moment before speaking. He said, "Some people only realize the value of something after they've lost it, but by then it's already too late." Sophia's fingers trembled, and the glass slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. In a daze, she returned to the apartment where she had lived with Oliver for 4 years. Opening the door, the familiar yet unfamiliar place made her feel suffocated. Oliver's clothes had been removed from the wardrobe, and the medical documents in the study were gone. Slippers, toothbrushes, and daily necessities were all gone as if they had vanished. She found a tightly sealed cardboard box under the bed. A label on the box read 2 words, "Past." Sophia trembled as she opened the box. Inside were all their photos, neatly arranged, from their awkward days as interns to last year's hospital year-end party. Under the photos was a black notebook with no words on the cover. Flipping to the first page, Sophia's heart tightened. Every page listed the dates they had agreed to undergo pre-marriage checkups, along with the reasons she had canceled at the last minute. March 15, 2019, reason for cancellation: sudden overtime. June 22, 2019, reason for cancellation: accompanying a close friend shopping. January 7, 2020, reason for cancellation: too tired, let's reschedule. Page after page, filled with dates and reasons. There were as many as 90 entries. On the last page, Oliver's handwriting was messy. 99 times. It must be the end. May you be happy. The notebook slipped from Sophia's hands as she sat on the ground, tears streaming down her face. Now she finally understood what she had lost. As soon as Sophia entered the hospital lobby, she sensed something was off. Doctors and nurses were gathered in small groups, but they fell silent and dispersed when they saw her approach. Have you heard? Oliver actually volunteered to go to the border because of his lack of clinical skills. Matthew's voice came from around the corner. His minimally invasive surgery plan wasn't his own idea. He had copied it from abroad, yet he took all the credit. Sophia clenched her fists, her nails digging deeply into her palms. She quietly backed up to the wall and continued eavesdropping. Actually, Oliver couldn't stay at the hospital anymore, and I just helped speed up the process. Matthew's smug voice was repulsive. You don't know how easy it is to make Nurse Sophia do what I want. All it takes is a little praise and some small gifts, and she'll do whatever I say. Wow, Dr. Matthew is really something. You even took Oliver's girlfriend and his research findings. Another intern praised him. That's nothing. Once I become department head, there'll be plenty of women coming after me. Just then, the sound of a glass shattering on the floor interrupted their conversation. Sophia stood in the middle of the corridor, her face pale. Go on. Dr. Matthew, tell me how you used me. Her voice was cold and unsettling. Matthew paused for a moment but quickly regained his smug expression. Since you've already heard it, I won't hide it anymore. He gave a cold smile. Sophia, You're just a stepping stool for me to climb into hospital management. Do you think I like you? An older sister who's 5 years older than me. Everyone around them gasped in shock. Sophia stood frozen in place, as if struck by lightning. Did you all see that? I only showed a little concern for her, and she immediately betrayed her fiancé of 5 years. Matthew looked at the crowd around him. Could someone like her really be a head nurse? Sophia's ears rang, and she felt deeply ashamed and foolish. In the afternoon, the hospital held an expert panel meeting to discuss Oliver's minimally invasive surgery plan. The meeting room was packed, with some experts even traveling from the provincial capital specifically for this. This surgery plan is truly the most remarkable breakthrough in recent years. The old professor said excitedly while holding his glasses. Please have Dr. Matthew explain the key innovations and challenges of this plan to us. Director Richard stared intently at Matthew. Matthew looked tense and stammered, unable to speak. I am still researching it. Dr. Matthew, could you explain why the surgery chose to enter through the 5th intercostal space instead of the traditional 4th intercostal space? Another expert asked. Matthew was speechless. Sophia stood in the corner, watching Matthew's embarrassment, but she felt no joy, only deep sadness. After the meeting, Sophia was called to the hospital's administrative office. The administrative director looked serious and said, Nurse Sophia, the hospital has noticed that you and Dr. Matthew may be involved in academic misconduct, possibly assisting in the theft of Dr. Oliver's research findings. Please submit a written explanation within a week, otherwise, the hospital will take serious measures. Sophia walked out of the office nervously and returned to the nurse's station to organize documents. In the depths of a drawer, she found a thermos lunchbox and several heating pads, covered in dust. Suddenly, scenes from several months ago flashed through her mind. Oliver had brought these items to the nurse's station multiple times, but she had scolded him, saying they were cluttering the work environment. At the time, Oliver had silently put the items away, his expression growing increasingly cold. You're always working night shifts. Your stomach isn't good, and you don't eat on time. His soft explanation seemed to play out before her eyes. Sophia picked up the dusty thermos lunchbox, her fingers trembling slightly. Actually, Dr. Oliver has always cared about you. Nurse Emma asked cautiously, do you know why he always has to work overtime? Sophia looked confused and shook her head. Emma's voice was soft. He said he was saving money to buy a wedding house for you too. Last month he paid the down payment, and he was planning to surprise you this month. Sophia felt dizzy and could barely stand. He never told me. He said he didn't want to put pressure on you and wanted to give you a warm home. Sophia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Many memories flashed through her mind like a movie. Oliver's tired expression after working overtime, his figure still at the hospital during holidays, and how he always agreed without hesitation whenever she made a request. In fact, he had been working so hard all along, yet she had never truly noticed. While tidying up the last corner of Oliver's office, Sophia found an unmailed letter addressed to her. She trembled as she opened the envelope, and familiar handwriting appeared before her eyes. Sophia, by the time you read this letter, I will already be on my way to the border. Over the past 5 years, our promises have been repeatedly postponed. I once believed that time could solve everything, but now I realize that some waits have no end. Seeing how you interact with Matthew, I finally understand that your heart no longer belongs to me. I understand you, perhaps we were never the right fit from the start. I have decided to let go and wish you happiness. We will never meet again. According to the Medical Ethics Committee's investigation, Dr. Matthew is suspected of serious academic misconduct and has been suspended effective immediately for further investigation. The hospital director spoke in a serious tone at the staff meeting. Due to liability, nurse manager Sophia's position has also been suspended pending further investigation. Sophia stood in the crowd with no expression on her face. These things no longer matter. After returning to the office, she submitted a 1-month leave of absence request. Are you going to the border to find Oliver? A colleague from Human Resources asked in surprise. Yes, I need to apologize to him in person, no matter the outcome. Do you know how dangerous it is at the border? The conditions are poor, and there are occasional outbreaks of infectious diseases. Sophia calmly handed the leave form to the person in front of her. No one wanted to approach her, and no one was willing to help or provide information. She packed her luggage alone and searched for all information related to the border medical team. 3 days later, Sophia finally arrived at the medical station in the border town. "Is Dr. Oliver here?" she asked the staff at the front desk. The staff shook their head and said, "The medical team is scattered across many villages and doesn't have a fixed location. Communication relies on monthly supply trucks." Sophia felt particularly discouraged. She urgently asked, "Is there any record? I need to find him as soon as possible." "Miss, this is the border, not your city," the staff said helplessly. "Many places don't even have electricity, let alone communication records." Sophia worked hard at the medical station all day and finally found John, the logistics manager of the medical team. "Dr. Oliver." "Oh, him. He volunteered to go to a very remote village called Shigo Village. It's a 4-hour mountain drive from the nearest highway. Even our team members have a hard time contacting him. He doesn't seem to want much contact with the outside world." Sophia's eyes were red, and she said, "I must see him. Take me there immediately." John hesitated. "There's no vehicle available until next week. I can't wait that long." The next morning, Sophia set off in an old Jeep. The mountain road was steep, and after the rain, the road was muddy. The wheels got stuck in the mud several times, and she and the driver had to get out to push the car. The driver shook his head and said, "No one wants to come to this place, except Dr. Oliver. You're the first city person to come looking for him on purpose." The car bumped along the narrow road by the cliff, and every shake made Sophia feel tense. This road is considered good. Dr. Oliver often walks on even more dangerous mountain paths to see patients. Last month, a landslide blocked the road due to heavy rain. He still decided to trek over the mountains and carry his medical kit there. In the evening, they finally arrived at Shigo Village. The elderly villagers at the village entrance greeted the strangers warmly. "Are you here to see Dr. Oliver? He's a true benefactor of our village. Last year, my wife contracted pneumonia and nearly didn't make it, but he rushed over in the middle of the night to help. He never talks about his past. Every time we ask him about life in the city, he changes the subject." The old man's words made Sophia feel both proud and heartbroken. "Where is Dr. Oliver? Can I see him?" The old man shook his head and said, "You're too late. This morning, an urgent message came from a village farther away, saying there was a woman in labor. Dr. Oliver left with his medical supplies. It'll take at least 3 days for him to return, and the mountain roads are even more difficult to navigate." Sophia's shoulders slumped slightly, and she felt tired and disappointed. She said softly, "I can wait for him." The village chief led her to Oliver's simple mud brick house, which was kept clean and tidy. In the middle of the room stood a makeshift military bed, and in the corner were a first aid kit and several medical books. The only decoration on the wall was a graduation photo from medical school. Upon closer inspection, Sophia realized it was a class photo. The photo had yellowed and been carefully cropped, with the parts where Oliver and Sophia stood together missing most of their faces. It was as if someone had tried to forget something but could never let go. Sophia gently touched the photo, and a tear fell onto the yellowed paper. "I'll wait for you to come back. This time, I'll be the one waiting for you." At dawn on the 3rd day, I entered the village carrying the medical kit, rainwater trickling down my clothes and soaking my back. After 36 hours of emergency surgery and the exhaustion of trekking over mountains, I could barely stand straight. The small clinic in the village was lit up, and there were figures moving inside. Old George must have been waiting impatiently. His grandson's high fever hadn't subsided. As I pushed open the door, I froze. She was sitting there, wearing an ill-fitting city outfit, holding a cup of tea. When she looked up at me, her eyes sparkled. "Oliver." I felt my whole body stiffen, my mind going blank. It was Sophia, a name I thought I'd never hear again. "How did you end up here?" My tone was colder than I'd intended. She stood up, her eyes red. "I came to find you." Rainwater dripped from my hair, soaking the clinic floor. "What do you want from me?" I turned away, set down the medical kit, and deliberately kept my distance from her. Sophia cried, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Oliver. I know I was wrong. Matthew deceived me. I was blinded by him at the time, but now I understand everything. Can we start over? I slowly packed up the medical equipment without looking at her. Did you and Matthew register your marriage? No. He's just a liar. He was fired from the hospital. How could I marry him? Have you been seeing someone else? I continued asking, my voice calm. I came to find you. I finally looked up and met her eyes. Sophia, your decision has nothing to do with me. I don't care if I can forgive you or not. I no longer feel anything about this. My words were like a dull knife, slowly and steadily piercing her heart. Her face turned pale, and her body began to shake. No, Oliver, you can't do this. I know you still care. I've already applied for a long-term border patrol job. I hung the stethoscope around my neck and said, this is my new life. Can you leave and not disturb me? She stood there unwaveringly and said, I won't leave unless you tell me yourself that you don't love me at all. A wave of resentment surged up inside me. I turned to her and said coldly, I don't love you anymore. Are you satisfied now? Her lips trembled slightly, but she still refused to leave. I didn't respond and began packing my medical bag. Suddenly, there was an urgent knock on the door. Dr. Oliver, something's wrong. It's raining heavily down the mountain, and the river is flooding. Several families' homes are underwater. Without hesitation, I grabbed the first aid kit and rushed out the door. Muddy water had already reached our ankles. Villagers were busy moving supplies, and the cries of the elderly and children sounded particularly piercing in the rain. Quick, save the injured. Those with minor injuries go to the village committee. The seriously injured must be taken to the clinic immediately. I shouted out instructions. While we were busy, a familiar figure caught my attention. Sophia, wearing a raincoat, was skillfully bandaging an elderly man's wounds. She looked up at me and said, this elderly man has a broken leg and needs immediate attention. Her professional tone and actions surprised me. Over the next 12 hours, we worked together like a well-oiled machine. There was no idle chatter, only brief medical instructions and swift action. By the time the last injured person was attended to, dawn had broken. She stood at the clinic entrance, her hair damp and clinging to her face, her eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. But she continued to meticulously record each patient's condition. You should rest, I said briefly before turning back to my room. That night, my arthritis flared up again. During the rainy season, the dampness and fatigue always caused me intense pain. I curled up in bed, trying not to make a sound. Soft footsteps came from outside, followed by hesitant knocking on the door. I didn't respond, but the door opened anyway. Sophia stood at the door, holding a cup of hot water and some pills. She said, I've reviewed your medical records. Your arthritis requires regular treatment. Why didn't you tell me? Go out. I replied coldly. Don't be stubborn, Oliver. I know you're in pain, but I don't want your pity. I almost shouted. I've gotten used to being alone. She put down the hot water and pills and left the room silently. The pills did ease the pain, but I felt even worse inside. On the third day, I went to the village entrance to treat a child with a fever. The old man saw me and said with a touch of emotion, Dr. Oliver, do you know? The little girl you saved last month looks a bit like the nurse in the city. I paused and continued examining the child. After you saved her that day, you stayed at the clinic for 2 straight nights without even closing your eyes. The old man continued later, when her fever broke. I saw you smoking outside the window, and your eyes were red. I didn't respond, just hurried my movements. Dr. Oliver, the most precious thing in life is to meet someone who truly loves you. If you miss that opportunity, you might not find it again even after waiting 500 years. I stood up and said calmly, the child is fine. It's just a common cold. Take the medicine on time and get plenty of rest. A week later, bad news arrived. An outbreak of fever with unknown causes had occurred in the neighboring village, and the symptoms spread rapidly. Some suspected it might be a mutated flu virus, and 3 people had already died. I told the villagers that we must isolate everyone with a fever. After checking the supplies, I found the situation dire. There were very few antiviral drugs and almost no protective gear. I have to go to the frontline isolation zone, I said briefly, beginning to put on my full protective gear. You can't go. Sophia blocked the door, insisting we wait for reinforcements and supplies. We can't wait. I went around her, saying there were already over 20 patients waiting for treatment. Before leaving, I looked back at her and said, "Stay in the village and don't approach the quarantine zone." The situation in the quarantine zone was even worse than I had imagined. There weren't enough beds, and many patients were lying on the ground. I began urgently treating critically ill patients and arranged for samples to be collected for testing. The next evening, a jeep loaded with medical supplies slowly entered the village. Sophia jumped out of the vehicle, followed by 2 medical staff members. She said, "These supplies were urgently dispatched from the provincial hospital, and more are on the way." She panted, "How did you manage to do this?" I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I tried to contact Director Richard, but the hospital never responded. She hurriedly directed the unloading, explaining that Matthew had spread rumors claiming the outbreak here was fake news fabricated by us. Later, I recorded a video apology, revealing all the truth, including how he stole your research findings and deceived me. Only then did Director Richard realize the severity of the situation. Her face was covered in dust, but her eyes shone with determination. I said nothing more, simply nodded, and continued tending to the patients. Over the next few days, we worked together seamlessly, like 2 well-oiled machines in the ward. Every tool she handed me was just right, and every test result was delivered on time. However, outside of work, I deliberately kept my distance from her. On the 4th night, a critically ill patient suddenly started bleeding heavily and needed emergency surgery. I didn't have an assistant. I frowned and said, "I'll help you." Sophia was already in her surgical scrubs. She said she'd worked in the emergency department for 3 years and it would be fine. There was no time to think, so I nodded in agreement. During the critical phase of the surgery, the patient's artery suddenly ruptured, and blood gushed out. I instinctively reached out and pressed my index finger directly against the bleeding site. "Quick, get the suction device and hemostats." I shouted the orders. Sophia immediately complied, using gauze to help compress the surrounding blood vessels. Despite the lack of adequate equipment, we successfully completed the difficult surgery. My right glove had a small tear, and blood was trickling out between my fingers. Sophia checked the medical records and her face turned pale. "You need to disinfect immediately. This patient has a history of hepatitis B. Bandage the patient first," I said calmly. Back in the makeshift medical room, I took off my gloves and found that the small wound on my fingertip was already covered in the patient's blood. Sophia didn't say much. She immediately performed the standard procedure and prepared a preventive vaccine. "Will it hurt?" she asked softly as she injected me. "No pain." I looked away. That night, as expected, I developed a high fever. Due to the infection risk and several days of exhaustion, my body finally gave in. In a daze, it felt like someone was changing my towel, feeding me water, and giving me medicine. "Sophia," I didn't even know what I was saying, my consciousness flickering in and out. "Why can't I let you go? I've already made up my mind." In a haze, I felt warm liquid dripping on my face. When I woke up, it was already the 3rd morning. Sophia was sleeping by the bedside, her hand tightly gripping my wrist, as if checking my pulse. There were obvious dark circles under her eyes, and her eyelashes were still damp with tears. I carefully pulled my hand away, got up, and put on my clothes. "You're awake," she exclaimed in surprise. "Your fever has gone down, but you still can't get out of bed. Thank you for taking care of me." My voice was a bit stiff as I said, "The words I spoke last night were just nonsense caused by the medication. Please don't take them to heart." Her expression grew somber, but she simply nodded silently. I understood. A week later, the epidemic was largely under control. The medical team delivered a letter informing me that I had been transferred to Onru village in the western region. a more remote area with inadequate medical facilities and harsher conditions. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Sophia blocked my path and said, "You're avoiding me, avoiding everything between us." I looked her straight in the eye and replied, "I'm not avoiding you. I'm making a choice. Enru village needs me most. There's not even a basic clinic there. What should I do then?" Her voice was pleading. "What should I do? You should go back to the city." I picked up my luggage and said, "This place isn't suitable for you." "Oliver," she called out behind me, "you have to tell me. Do you really not love me at all?" I stopped in my tracks but didn't turn around. Whether I love you or not doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I've learned how to live without you.